U-boat commanders earned a reputation for their courage, skill, and bold actions during the Second World War. Yet, beyond their image as fearless warriors, many were also known for being some of the most peculiar and eccentric figures in military history. Their strange habits and unconventional methods made them unpredictable. Among them, one commander stood out, Wolfgang Luth. His life and career paint a picture of someone both remarkably successful and deeply unconventional. Wolfgang Luth began his naval career in April 1933 after studying law for 3 semesters. That summer, he spent 3 months on the sailing school ship Gorsch Fock, followed by a 9-month training voyage aboard the light cruiser Karlsruhe, which took him to India, Indonesia, Australia, and both North and South America. After a year on the light cruiser Königsberg, he transferred to the U-boat force in February 1937. By July of that year, he was second watch officer on U-27 and completed a patrol in Spanish waters during the Spanish Civil War. In October 1937, he became first watch officer on U-38 under Captain Heinrich Liebe and was on patrol in September 1939 when the war began. After a brief stint on a school boat, Luth took command of the small U-boat U-9. Over 6 patrols, he recorded his first successes, notably sinking the French submarine Doris in May 1940. A month later, he commissioned U-138, a Type Tat-D U-boat. On his first patrol in the new vessel in September 1940, he sank 4 ships totaling over 34,600 tons, a remarkable feat for a small coastal U-boat. After returning from his second patrol, during which he sank 1 ship and damaged another, he was awarded the Knight's Cross, becoming the only commander of a coastal-type U-boat to receive that decoration. Later that October, he took over the larger U-43 and during 5 patrols sank 12 ships with a combined tonnage of over 68,000. He left U-43 in April 1942. In May 1942, Luth commissioned U-181, a Type 1XD-2 U-boat. That September, he set off for his first patrol, covering areas in the Indian Ocean and around South Africa. He reached Cape Town in late October, sinking 4 ships in 2 weeks. On November 16th, he received word he had been awarded the Oak Leaves to his Knight's Cross. Before returning to base, he sank 8 more ships totaling over 36,000 tons, arriving in Bordeaux in January 1943. In March 1943, he embarked on another patrol in African waters and the Indian Ocean. Despite challenging conditions, he sank 10 more ships with a combined tonnage exceeding 45,000. During this patrol, he became the first U-boat officer to receive the Knight's Cross with oak leaves, swords, and diamonds. This journey also became the second longest patrol of the war at 205 days, surpassed only by U-196's 225-day mission under Kentrat. To maintain crew morale on such a long deployment, Luth introduced several creative initiatives, including a shipboard newspaper, contests, and other activities to keep the men engaged and healthy. He spoke about these efforts during a conference in Weimar in December 1943, offering insight into the psychological challenges of prolonged missions. By January 1944, after over 5 years of continuous U-boat service, Luth was appointed commander of the 22nd Training Flotilla, tasked with preparing future U-boat captains. In July 1944, he took command of the first section at the Naval Academy in Flensburg, Mürwik, where future officers of the Kriegsmarine were trained. That September, he became the youngest commander of the academy. Triton, king of the seas, belched as another man was dragged to his feet. Like the others before him, the prisoner was filthy, covered in diesel oil, and dressed in rags. Triton yawned, picked his nose, and asked for the man's name. "Schmidt, Your Majesty," came the reply. Triton leaned in, amused by the sight, and remarked on the man's pathetic appearance. Laughter erupted from the crowd. With a smirk, Triton signaled the guards, who then smacked Schmidt on the bottom with a pine plank. The king slouched back, fingers still in his nose, and asked again what the prisoner wanted. "Holy baptism, your majesty." Triton lazily waved him off, ordering more torment before granting the request. The crowd roared as Schmidt was dragged away, smiling despite the humiliation, for this was all part of the game. Triton was not a real king, but a shipmate named Grobelny in costume. His court was the deck of U-181, and Schmidt, like the rest, was participating in the equator crossing ritual. Luth, the commander, laughed along with the crew. Then, as the next man was brought forward, Luth stepped aside, lit a cigar, and gazed out at the vast ocean. It was October 16th, 1942. U-181 was crossing the equator, 500 nautical miles southwest of Freetown, en route to the Cape of Good Hope. The sun was blazing, the deck too hot for bare feet, and temperatures in the engine room hovered around 140 degrees Fahrenheit. The absurd ceremony behind him only underscored how surreal life at sea could be. Just 9 months earlier, his previous boat had been locked in ice so thick that it had to be hammered off. By October 1942, Luth had already been a U-boat commander for nearly 3 years. During those years, his performance, while not legendary, was more than adequate, and he grew into the role. His first command was U-9, a Type 2A U-boat commissioned in 1935 and the namesake of Otto Weddigen's famous SMU-9. Across 4 patrols, he sank 3 ships, the first 2 in a rather absurd fashion. His second patrol, which involved mine-laying, only succeeded due to a stroke of luck often reserved for fools. During Operation Weserübung, he was stationed outside Bergen, a position that left him extremely bored. After the invasion began, he fired 4 faulty magnetic torpedoes at the Polish destroyer Grom, none of which hit their target or even functioned properly. Following U-9, he took command of U-138. In June 1940, he was frustrated to be pulled away from the front lines to oversee her commissioning. Nonetheless, he went on to earn the Knight's Cross as her commander. Interestingly, after nearly 3 months of commissioning and sea trials, Luth only completed 2 war patrols in this boat, both in the western approaches during the chaotic month of October 1940, before being reassigned to command U-43, a larger Type 1 XB. Within 3 months, one of his watch officers accidentally sank the boat in Lorient Harbor. While another officer might have been dismissed in disgrace, Luth was ultimately forgiven. Over the next year, he participated in efforts to track the Bismarck, welcomed Operation Barbarossa, spotted American vessels in his sights, and sank 22 ships across 5 patrols. Just 5 days before Victor Erne left Wilhelmshaven for the North Atlantic in May 1940, Luth had departed from the same port in U-9, bound for the English Channel. They were the only 2 German U-boat commanders at sea for most of that month, and represented a striking contrast. Erne was handsome in a somber, respectable way, resembling a successful businessman awkwardly strapped to the wing of a small airplane when he stood on the bridge of U-37 in full dress. Luth, on the other hand, was plain. After a shave and in a clean uniform, he appeared less so, but he had a pointed head, a bald scalp, a prominent nose, and a wide gap between his front teeth, wide enough to push a pencil through. Where Erne was urbane, diplomatic, and thoughtful, Luth lacked diplomacy and tact. He was notoriously rude, intrusive, and extremely prudish when it came to others' private lives. Sentimentality was foreign to him. More importantly, the 2 men approached their jobs very differently. Erne was cautious, torn between the drive to achieve success and the desire to limit harm. He sank ships because duty demanded it. Luth, by contrast, approached his work with the cold efficiency of a predator. On May 9, 1940, for example, he sank the French submarine Doris off the Dutch coast. When the vessel exploded and human remains rained down on U-9's bridge, Luth showed no emotion. His watch officer remarked, "Poor fellows, they were just like us." But war suppresses such feelings. Luth justified the action with the logic that if he hadn't sunk them, they would have sunk him or someone else. This view was common, but Luth held to it more rigidly than most. His friend Theodore Peterson later said Luth had no real concept of the suffering he caused with each torpedo. As his career advanced and his tally grew, his behavior worsened. He gained a reputation as overtly political and was one of the few U-boat officers to openly admire National Socialism. He regularly made favorable comments about the government and the party. His cruel streak became more obvious. Peterson once again noted that Luth lacked any real understanding of the human misery he unleashed. In April 1941, he destroyed the French sailing vessel Notre Dame de Châtelet, killing several crewmen, not because it posed any threat, but because he wanted target practice and was still fuming after Admiral Dönitz scolded him for scuttling his own boat in Lorient. Another commander, Carl Friedrich Merten, murmured, "Not something I would have done," reflecting broader disapproval. Luth's prudish morality irritated many. He pressured his men to marry and have children. If they were already married, he urged them to stay faithful and expand their families for the sake of the Reich. He banned visits to brothels, followed his officers to ensure fidelity, prohibited pin-up photos and inappropriate reading materials, and abstained from alcohol. The idea of Luth relaxing in a bar or club was laughable. Peterson once took him to a place called the Lido, and Luth was horrified to discover there were nude women inside. His odd behavior bordered on eccentricity. Lothar Günther Buchheim once said that Luth was the strangest man he had ever met. Few commanders with such glaring flaws survived long in the U-boat force. While some were devoted Nazis, some were morally upright, some were bullies, and a few were outright psychopaths. None of the top commanders carried as much personal baggage as Luth. Yet he not only survived, but excelled. By the time he left the front, only Otto Kretschmer had sunk more tonnage. His career, spanning the entirety of the war, may have been more impressive and fulfilling than any other. This may seem unfair until one considers Luth's singular strength, his extraordinary ability to lead men. His sense of responsibility for his crew defined his leadership. He spent more time than most explaining his ideas on U-boat command and authored what became the most important first-hand account on the subject. A lecture delivered to a gathering of Kriegsmarine officers in Weimar in December 1943. Entitled Problems of Leadership in a Submarine, it became both an essential training resource and a valuable historical document. It remains one of the most insightful accounts of the psychological dynamics aboard a U-boat and one of the few unfiltered wartime statements from a commander. This lecture, roughly 10,000 words long and lasting over an hour, was divided into 5 uneven sections. In it, Luth discussed what he believed were the essential elements of successful leadership: discipline, success, daily routine aboard the boat, the example set by officers, spiritual guidance, and genuine concern for the welfare of the crew. While he didn't strictly follow his own structure, the points he made were clear. One of Luth's preferred methods of leadership was competition. He turned everything into a contest, no matter how mundane or unusual. After the boat's doctor, Lothar Engel, gave a lecture on hygiene and venereal disease, Luth organized a poetry contest on the same subjects. The winning poems were predictably crude. He also held a tall tale contest in which crew members competed to tell the most outrageous lies. He organized a shipboard Olympic Games, drawing contests, chess and card tournaments, and even a singing competition that was broadcast with commentary over the address system. He encouraged a competitive spirit among the few other U-boats operating in the Indian Ocean by publishing each boat's tonnage totals in the onboard newspaper. He had a knack for turning unexpected moments into opportunities. Inside a U-boat, even one as large as U-181, 88 meters long, equipped with 3 deck guns and a refrigerator. Space and options for entertainment were limited, making it essential to adapt external events to maintain morale. Sinkings provided the most effective break from routine. During a chase, he would call crew members to the bridge to observe the target through binoculars and try to identify the ship. During attacks, he kept the crew updated on torpedo launches, angles, run times, and the results. After sinking the Panamanian steamer Amaryllis in December 1942, he allowed the crew to bring a live sheep aboard. Fresh meat was rare on long patrols, and the sheep was enthusiastically butchered and roasted. He placed great importance on celebrating holidays and birthdays. No occasion was too minor to warrant a celebration. Christmas was the most significant. On Christmas Eve, the officers' mess was dissolved, and the entire crew dined together, exchanged gifts, and sang songs around a makeshift Christmas tree constructed from green toilet paper. Easter, Mother's Day, and Father's Day were also celebrated, especially the last two, reflecting his strong convictions about family and parenthood. By the time he returned from his final patrol, he had 3 children. Birthdays were marked with songs, cakes, and cognac. Crossing the equator was commemorated with a lavish ceremony preceded by weeks of anticipation and certificates made by hand. U-181 was also among the few submarines in the fleet that formally observed Hitler's birthday. In the final paragraph of his lecture, Problems of Leadership, he stated a simple truth: a commander's foremost duty, concern, and commitment must be to his crew. Unfortunately, he spoiled the conclusion by injecting an unnecessary reference to Nazi ideology, merging his most admirable quality, the reason he gave the lecture and earned his reputation, with his greatest flaw. Ironically, one of the most appreciative responses to Problems of Leadership came from American submarine commander Edward L. Beach. He remarked that the lecture was right on target, noting that while Luth's practices might require adjustments for different submarine designs and wartime experiences, many would have applied just as well to American crews. Some methods seemed pedantic, but Beach admitted his own methods could be too, and some of Luth's ideas were genuinely innovative. He even wished he'd thought of them himself. For instance, in one competition, Luth awarded the prize by standing a crew member's watch for him. This had a unique impact, showing that the captain was capable of and willing to perform any duty aboard the boat. Beach doubted that Luth's style would have worked on one of his own vessels, as each crew and environment were different, but he believed Luth would have devised equally effective strategies in any setting. Problems of Leadership remains an imperfect but revealing glimpse into effective leadership at the U-boat command level. It's the most comprehensive such document that exists, despite being poorly written, politically biased, and sometimes easy to ridicule. To truly understand what made Luth unique, it is better to listen to those who served under him. Their loyalty endured for over half a century and beyond death. Franz Parrish, one of Luth's crew on that final long patrol, wrote that the crew stood by him unwaveringly, ready to go through fire for him. Walter Schmidt echoed the sentiment with sorrow, saying there were no men like him anymore. Some contemporaries considered his crew management style naive and even comical, particularly those commanders who had endured brutal attacks from aircraft and escort ships in the North Atlantic. For them, keeping the crew amused during monotonous patrols was not a relatable concern. Lothar Gunther Buchheim's Das Boot mocks Luth's famous lecture, though the real lecture took place 2 years after the novel's events. Still, it's clear whom Buchheim was satirizing. Luth's paternalism was well known. He believed his responsibilities extended beyond the submarine and into the personal lives of his men. All reading materials required his approval, and pin-ups were banned as part of his effort to eliminate what he saw as sexual distractions. He actively pushed his beliefs on health during patrols, mandating certain clothing, restricting cigarettes, and regulating food and drink. Despite these strict rules, his leadership inspired lasting devotion. He continued helping his former crew members with personal and professional matters even after leaving U-181, answering their requests despite his busy schedule. He was a charismatic leader, a quality that drew comparisons to Grand Admiral Dönitz, who stated after the war that Luth had been selected to become Befehlshaber der Unterseeboote, BDU, the supreme commander of the U-boat force. However, had he survived, his outspoken political views likely would have led to long-term Allied imprisonment and possibly barred him from future positions of authority. Just a few days after Germany's surrender, Luth died in a tragic accident on May 13, 1945. He was shot by a sentry at the Naval Academy after failing to identify himself or provide the correct password. The fatal shot, fired in darkness at an unseen figure, struck him in the head and killed him instantly. The reasons for his silence remain unclear. Some speculate it was deliberate suicide. Others suggest the sentry didn't hear his response. But the most likely explanation is that Luth was distracted, tired, or possibly intoxicated as he crossed the grounds shortly after midnight. Wolfgang Luth was one of the most controversial U-boat commanders. His open support for Nazism made him especially divisive, but his personality and even his accomplishments drew criticism. While his total tonnage sunk was immense, many of his victories occurred in the less defended waters of Africa and the Indian Ocean, rather than the heavily guarded North Atlantic. 2 days after his death, he was given the Third Reich's last state funeral. 6 Knights Cross-decorated U-boat officers served as the honor guard, and Admiral Dönitz gave the final address. Luth was credited with sinking 46 merchant ships and 1 submarine, the French Doris, across 15 war patrols, totaling 225,204 gross registered tons, making him the second most successful U-boat commander by tonnage. A memorial stone at the Naval Academy in Mürwik continues to commemorate his legacy.